Welcome, Shannon Pestun from ATB Financial.
Thank you.
Women's entrepreneur and banking for women.
Yes.
Super cool stuff. You guys are doing some really amazing things out of there. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this particular field?
Yeah, I often call myself the accidental banker. I don't think, 10 years ago, if I would have known I'd be in this chair today talking about what I talk about, I don't think I ever would have thought it was going to be my career path. But I was in marketing, and I started 10 years ago with ATB in a marketing role. And I grew up in a family that had a business. And so I was always drawn to entrepreneurship. So I worked in our business and agriculture group. And one day I just had this idea that I wanted to become a banker. And it's not very often marketing goes into finance. It's usually the other way around. And I did. I went in, I became a business lender, and I did that for about 6 years with ATB. And it was in that role that one day, again, everything kind of happens that one day you have that moment, and I looked around at my portfolio and I thought, where are all the women? Because in 6 years, I could count on two hands the number of women that I had as customers.
Yeah.
And that sparked an aha moment for me. And I just really started to research to try and understand why that is. And even if what I was seeing was what was kind of happening everywhere, I just wasn't sure if it was just me or, and yeah, sure enough, I uncovered that there's a huge entrepreneurship gap in Canada. And I was fortunate enough that ATB supported the work that I was doing and gave me a platform through this role as Director of Women's Entrepreneurship to really understand how we can be a catalyst for change in women's entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a fantastic program from what we've been looking at. So can you talk about exactly what some of the initiatives that you guys are doing to assist women in banking and in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, there's a lot that we're doing internally within ATB, and I'll kind of speak to both, I guess, and then what we're doing from a market standpoint. But I think to really understand how to advance women's entrepreneurship, you have to be able to understand what some of the systemic challenges are, as well as some of the attitudinal challenges that women face, and then it all kind of comes, everything is sort of it outflows from there. Mm-hmm. But from a market standpoint, one of the ways that we're really trying to help women is we recognize that access to capital is the biggest barrier that women face. And right now, actually, we're running the ATB Build Her Business campaign, which is a crowdfunding campaign, and it's a rewards-based crowdfunding campaign that allows women to use our system, use our crowdfunding platform as a way to start and grow their businesses. So they can come on, and they're going through as a cohort right now. We have 32 women from across Alberta who are campaigning. They have until March 13th to get their financing goals met.
Awesome.
But that's one way, because we recognize that access to capital is a big barrier. We also have entrepreneur centers across the province, which are an incredible resource. We have strategists there that are non-bankers, so women can go in, bring their business plan, talk about what they want to do in their business, how they want to grow their business, and then we start connecting them internally through ATB. And another program that I'm really excited about is our ATB Accelerator program. And this is a cohort. It's an accelerator program that is open to men and women. But what I'm really excited about is that we have more than 50% representation from women entrepreneurs in that program currently.
Wicked.
So those are some of the things that we're doing externally. And, we certainly support our whole ecosystem. We're a big part of the Alberta ecosystem. So whether it's through education, or whether it's working through civil society, groups like Alberta Women Entrepreneurs, groups like the Business Link, groups like Community Futures, like we're very much a part of all coming together to solve for what we see as being this gap.
Mm-hmm. And trying to, I like that, the together.
It
together. We got to do it together. So get it all under one umbrella and making it happen. So what are you guys doing internally? So those are some of the programs that you guys are offering. What are some of the things that you guys are doing internally that are addressing, to making these programs come together? So you were talking about earlier, and you have to excuse me, lots on my brain, but the gender, and it was
Yeah, we speak about the language that we use as gender intelligence, and
That's
we see this actually as an emerging theme that's taking place around the world. And last year I had the privilege of attending the Financial Alliance for Women Summit, and that was really eye-opening because the concept of being gender intelligent in financial service is what will help the industry become a catalyst for women's empowerment, economic empowerment, and advancement. And so from a gender intelligence standpoint, that's really understanding how are we set up as an organization to really meet the needs of our women customers. It's also understanding where we might play a role in some of the barriers that exist. So examples like being access to capital. How does unconscious bias play a role when we're looking at women-led businesses? The assumptions that we might make about women's businesses, or how they may or may not perform as entrepreneurs. Gotcha. So it's a lot of it is a cultural shift internally to recognize that there is this gap, there is this entrepreneurial gap. And right now, if you took a look at all small to medium-sized businesses across the country, majority women-led companies only represent 16%. So we know that there's a lot of work to do. And access to capital is a big piece when it comes to helping women start and grow their companies. So right now, a lot of it is conversation internally to say, how do we do better?
Right.
I mean, there's no one has the formula. Like we're all trying to figure this out. I think as a financial industry, you're seeing all of us come to the table right now to better serve women customers. We know that women are creating wealth at unprecedented rates. They're inheriting wealth at unprecedented rates. And so there's a huge potential in what we call the female economy. And it's how do we show up to make it not just an economic benefit for Alberta, but a social benefit as well.
And we've talked about the benefit in dollars on what kind of impact that can have if we do adopt these programs fully. We've looked at studies that said $150 billion and added to the economy.
Yeah,
that's massive.
It's a huge number, and there is so much potential sitting in that. And the government of Canada, under their women's entrepreneurship strategy, this is some of the information and the statistics that have come from them to say that by 2026, by having a more inclusive entrepreneurial environment and by focusing on gender equality, we can unlock $150 billion in incremental GDP, which is massive.
And that's kind of one of your guys' goals, is to try and get that adoption happening so we can hit those targets.
Yes, and so I am part of the panel that is under the women's entrepreneurship strategy, and that is one of the goals is to double that number. And so we're working really hard to, and I think this is when we say no one can do this alone.
Yeah.
We realize that we have to engage everyone in this conversation to understand how we're going to actually move that needle forward.
Right. Let's talk about Alberta specifically and how the climate looks here when it comes to this specific topic. How is Alberta ranking? How are we doing? Are we kind of getting it together?
I love this question, and it's one that I love because when it comes to participation rates, women entrepreneurs are leading the country in their numbers. And, there's a couple of things that are driving that. And one is actually a question of necessity, though, versus opportunity. And obviously, we are having some challenging economic times right now.
Yeah.
But this is also in these times that you do see a rise in entrepreneurship. And when women are going to find themselves potentially as accidental entrepreneurs in this economy as well. But what was really exciting is last year, Alberta became the first province to officially proclaim Women's Entrepreneurship Day, which is November 19th. So this is a day that's celebrated around the world in 144 different countries. It is celebrated at the UN headquarters in New York. And so Alberta, we are leading in so many ways around the conversation and around how we're trying to change the conversation and bring together this full ecosystem. And I think that November 19th proclamation that the government of Alberta put a stamp on was a big signal to say that women's entrepreneurship matters in this province.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to hear that we are driving these initiatives, especially from here in this province. And I mean, it looks like Canada is starting to kind of fully get on board slowly but surely. We have a long way to go, obviously. But it's good to see that those initiatives are at least getting recognized, getting noticed, and the push. So now I know we talk a lot about this and in other programs. We've had a conversation off camera about this, about what needs to be done to make this initiative become more accepted. And we talk about the cultural shift, the mindset shift that needs to happen. Can you talk a little bit to that?
I think we're learning, right?
Yeah.
And I think, what I have seen over the last 10 years. And I have to admit that myself, I was gender blind when I first started this work. As I said earlier, I did not expect to be doing this. But suddenly you see, the problem or the challenge that's in front of us. And It's about changing the conversation. It's bringing people in to understand why this matters to all of us and what we're leaving on the table by not helping to harness the full potential of women. We know that women entrepreneurs, that their companies, they go back into the communities. They're giving more to their families. Like there's so much social benefit from women's entrepreneurship, but we're not always telling that story. And we're also not really telling the story about why this gap exists. And I think it's because a lot of this is still really new.
Yes.
And so I think the more that we have these conversations, and as much as I think Alberta has been a great leader, we're seeing this across the country.
Yeah.
And in all fairness, we're all looking at this as an industry. We're looking at it from a financial industry perspective, from funding of programs that support women's entrepreneurship. Like we're all in this together. And I think what's happening now and what we're seeing is more of a shared song sheet, if you will, about why this matters.
Yeah.
So what we need to continue to do is work as an industry, work as an ecosystem, as an industry, but work as an ecosystem that involves government, that involves education. Education plays a huge role in this. And we need to be involving civil society. Those are some of your not-for-profit organizations that are also doing amazing work in this. And our government plays a big role. So we're all in this. And I think just the more that we have these open conversations, the more that we say, how can we be part of the solution? We will get there.
It makes no sense to not do this, especially when we look at an economy right now. It just makes no sense. And I mean, that's not a great comment to say it that way. It just makes no sense to not do this.
I think the rationale for doing it is very strong. The business case is there.
Right.
And so you're certainly right. And on the other hand, like women are 50% of our population. Like this is not a niche segment.
Yeah.
This is a significant portion of our population. And when you take a look at the growing number of women in leadership, where women are, how we're graduating at higher levels than our male counterparts, when we're seeing the benefits that are coming as a society from women-led businesses, in my mind, there is no case not to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic. Shannon, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and sharing the story of what needs to be done and what we're slowly starting to get done to make this shift happen and to get us into a better and brighter future. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us.
Thank you.
You came all the way up from Calgary to do this with us. So we appreciate that big time.
I appreciate having a platform to share what we're doing at ATB. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. All righty.
What that's called.